there's no doubt about it. If you're an agent, the minute that it's even discussed that the agent representing the client that is being discussed as a potential franchise taggee is going to go, well, that's exactly where we're going to start year one at, and then we'll go up from there, and that can handcuff you too.
Yeah, so this was, to me, that's a tell. I think that Nick Caserio has told us two things today. And look, maybe I'm reading too much into it. If I am, 713-780-ESPN, HRMP listener line, 713-780-3776. I think he's telling you he doesn't want to spend a lot of money on one singular player. And then secondly, it sounds to me like he's not using the tag. It sounds like he's willing to let John Grenard enter free agency and then let the market determine what John Grenard's actual price tag is, and then maybe you make a decision at that point. But it doesn't sound to me like, Brian, like Nick Caserio has any intention to use the tag on Grenard or Dalton Schultz.
Yeah, certainly of the two things, and I agree with both points that he's probably tipped his hands on both, but I'm certainly more convinced of the latter part with the franchise tag, specifically with John Grenard, because I don't really think Dalton Schultz is that much of an option. But I think what he told you right there is there's no way in his mind that Jonathan Grenard, based off just really the one good season, is worth $20 million per year. And he's hoping that he hits free agency and the market tells Jonathan Grenard, we also don't think you're worth $20 million a year. And then he can negotiate off of that number as opposed to setting 20 as the starting point and negotiating off of the $20 million number.
Do you agree on both points?
I do. I just think that we can have some fun and we can talk about the windows and all those other things. But for me, the main takeaway is that he is not in the business of franchise tagging anybody, and he believes that whether you call him, as you call him, a wheeling dealing son of a gun or not, he's going to find a way to either get that guy at the price that he feels he's worth, or he's going to find someone else that at probably a lesser price that's going to do just the same thing as he's been able to do.
Well, I want the Texans to spend. Let's be very, very clear. I want the Texans to spend 95% of their cap space. I want them to, like, you have to leave the money for the operating expenses for the cap going into the end season. But if they don't spend near all of their money that they have, I will be majorly disappointed in the Houston Texans.
Yeah, no, look, I think that we've kind of highlighted for you, you don't spend all of it because injuries do happen, and also you've got to have, money allocated for the draft and for your draft picks. But other than that, I want them to explore every avenue and spend every dollar that they can, aside from those two things that you're planning for, to make sure that this roster gets better next year. The schedule's tougher. The expectations are higher. This team achieved so much last year. No one wants to see them take even a half step back. In order to do that, you're going to need to fortify this roster because we've told you of the starting positions that are up for grabs or players potentially leaving. And with the replacements, you're just not going to bring some stiff off the street to fill the majority of them. You're going to want to upgrade those positions.
3311, Nick Caserio is telling us that he's no Merriam-Webster. He tries to tell you that he's smarter than him. 8240, it's Brandon. I prefer to not go big game hunting. I believe in the coaching staff and C.J. Stroud to elevate the team to where they need to be. I agree. Still want to spend the money. Here's the question, though. Which of the two do you believe can elevate their side of the ball more? DeMeco Ryans, defensive-minded head coach. C.J. Stroud will be in his second year, top 5, 7, wherever you have him ranked quarterback in the NFL. Which of the two do you have more faith in that can lift their side of the ball?
C.J.
Really?
Yeah, I do C.J. because of the fact that with his abilities, it's literally during the field of play, we've seen what he's been able to do to the receiver room. We've seen that, because of his accuracy and his ability to put the football exactly where it needs to be, a lot of guys can up their game. I think DeMeco can coach them up. DeMeco has done this in the past in San Francisco with guys where he's created unbelievable success stories with guys like Fred Warner and others. But at the same time, they still got to go out and make plays. And they got to have the ability to go out and make the plays and make them consistently. And maybe it's easier because it's CJ, but I believe more in CJ from what I saw the entire year. Not that I disbelieve DeMeco, but of the two, I think CJ because it's on the field while the games are going on that he makes guys better play after play.
I guess they both did it in a way last year. I would say that CJ did it more, so maybe CJ has scoreboard on DeMeco. I mean, he brought up Nico. Nico never had the year that he had until he was there. Tank Dell had a tremendous rookie year for a third-round receiver. I think D'Amico brought up the defensive side, too, from where it was, and you look at, like, Stingley's success, but he was healthier. You look at Christian Harris from where he was at the start of the year to the end of the year. So I think they both did it. I think that's what's good about having them both, right? CJ can lift the offense, and then D'Amico can lift the defense. 713-780-3776. Fuentes says, I don't want them to spend for the sake of spending, but I want to win every deal, B- or better grade if we were to grade the contracts. I get that. I'm a return on investment guy, so I totally respect that, respecter. But you need to spend the money. Like, you can't just sit on it. Now, here is the nightmare scenario that Nick Caserio, I think that this is going to be a nightmare scenario for all of you that are listener. He brought up something that I hadn't really thought about. Brought up something that I'm not sure many people have thought about, because we've argued what's the best way to spend the money. Is it Saquon? Is it Evans? Is it, spreading the wealth and getting 20 really good players? Blah, 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 blah. Nick Caserio brings up the idea of sitting on the money.
We have some flexibility relative to financial commitments that we might be able to make, but you don't necessarily have to use all your money up in 1 year. And I've talked about this previously. Really look at your team in sort of 2-year increments. So whatever you don't do this year, that money's going to be used in future years. I'm sure I'll get a question here very soon about Nico Collins. That's coming. So that could be a player that maybe he's a part of the future. So you're dealing with the present. You're focused on the short term, but part of our responsibility is to kind of think ahead a little bit. And just try to make good, sound decisions for the team and the organization.
Well, can I push back here a little bit on Nick?
Yeah, of course.
Wasn't year one of the 2-year window in the 2-year increments?
There you go.
Okay, but
Don't
wait.
say window.
Hear me out here. Year one of the increments of 2 would have been last year. His first year with D'Amico. His first year with CJ. His first year with everything in place going forward now that the coaching staffs of the past are gone and the new regime in. So this would be year 2 of a 2-year window, and what you didn't spend last year, you should be spending this year. If I hear his quote right.
Yeah, it's interesting. I
didn't hear him say 3-year increments.
This is the first time that I've even heard, like, from anybody. Like, obviously the team hasn't talked a lot, and they're going to say as little as they can about free agency, whether it was D'Amico yesterday, whether it was Nick today. But even all of, we have tons of Twitter content, like Texans content on Twitter. Everybody that does radio shows, not only on this station, but the entire city. I have not heard one person say kind of sit on the money and then roll it over and start looking into the future about potential extension. He brought up Nico Collins on his own, by the way.
He did.
He was not asked about
Absolutely.
Nico Collins at all. He said, we're about to get asked a question about Nico Collins, which I'm sure is coming up. Never came up. Nobody asked about Nico Collins. I don't think anybody would have asked about Nico Collins. He went out of his way to bring up a player whose contract expires after next season, and also brought up the notion that perhaps they sit on some money to put them in better position to re-sign that guy in a year.
Yeah, that's a very perplexing way of thinking and going about his business and the way that he's handling all of this. Because to me, it just seems like every year is a new year all in itself. And no matter if the window's open, closed, it's increments, it's however you look at it, the fact is you're either good getting better or you're that much closer to rebuilding. And when you look at it from year to year, it's such a hyper important year because you maximized an easy schedule. You had guys take, quantum leaps when you thought that it was baby steps. But now the expectations have changed and everybody's outlook seemingly should change too. And the last thing you want them to do is put a whole bunch of money in their back pocket and save it for a rainy day. Because, brother, it's supposed to be sunshine and rainbows for the next 3-4 years.